it is an interesting topic about how much of this is Adam Peters versus the head coaches and the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And I think this is a legitimate discussion to have because one thing that everyone loves to kill AP for, and I think we're all universally in agreement on, is that Lattimore trade has turned out to be a disaster. No question about it. You look back, you got Lattimore and a fifth, which was also subsequently traded. That fifth rounder turned into Jordan James, the running back for the Niners that barely played this year. I think it'd actually be a good player, but he's obviously stuck behind Brian Robinson and Christian McCaffrey. This is what the Commanders gave up. A third-round pick, which turned out to be Jonas Sanker, really good safety out of Virginia, has played well for the Saints this year. Quincy Riley and Devin Neal. Good players, but I don't think that impact is nearly as big as not hitting on more than maybe one of your 6 top 100 picks in the 2024 draft. That, to me, is the bigger issue than the Lattimore trade. Because that's how you're supposed to build this team. You can no longer use the excuse of Ron leaving the cupboard bare. You've had 2 full off seasons. You've had a lot of cap space. And you had enough picks to do this, to get this thing turned around. Because even though they've traded some of the picks, they had the picks in 24. And while they would ask, when you talk about trading so many of these picks, one of the things that Adam Peters would say is, look, all of our guys made the team coming out of 2024, which was true. But now, Dominique Hampton's not on the team anymore, so that's a guy that didn't make the team. If you look at the 2024 draft, look at the guys that were drafted at the top of this thing, and that, to me, is more the issue than some of the misses at trades, more so the Marshawn Lattimore. We've talked about this a ton, so I don't know that I have to fully rehash this, but 6 picks inside the top 100. Jaden, home run. We get that. I know some people are going to relitigate should they have taken Drake May? And I do think that was an interesting point that he brought up that, look, their third quarterback, if they weren't going to go Jaden, which part of it is, I think you do your evaluation, not that you don't do your due diligence on everybody, but who cares who was ranked third for him? He was never going to have to pick his third option. You were picking second. So you were either picking your 1 or 2. So he could say whatever he wants as his third option. If he truly had J.J. McCarthy, then maybe that's a bit of an issue, but I don't really care all that much about that opinion because of the fact that they were picking second. But Jaden Daniels, home run, we get that. Johnny Newton, I haven't seen him show up for more than 1 game, really, in 2 years. I saw him play really well against the Cowboys on Christmas. Outside of that, he's not playing nearly the amount of snaps that you'd like to see for the 36th overall pick, much less having the impact that you would like to see for the 36th overall pick. Mikey Sandristill's had a good... It's tough to evaluate Mikey because if you separate his 2 years into a second half, and you make it basically 4 quarters of his career, the first quarter of his career was below average. The second quarter of his career was awesome. The third quarter of his career stunk. And the fourth quarter of his career was a little bit better than the third quarter, but not by much. So 3 out of the 4 quarters have been below average to bad. 1 quarter has been spectacular. So what is Mikey? I have no idea. I hope he's more like the guy that we saw at the second half of last year. But are they going to be able to get him back to that level of play? So Mikey's still a question mark because you'd say 75% bad, 25% good. Ben Sinnott, I still think there's more untapped potential there, but that's maybe more so just me. Like, at this rate, that's more so just a belief that I have versus actual reality, because if I'm just working off of what I've seen with my own 2 eyes, he's not been that good. He can block. I don't draft a blocking tight end that doesn't catch the football at 53, though. I think he can be a usable offensive asset. You can't even say weapon because he doesn't catch the football, but he can block in the John Bates role. I think he's okay. Again, 53rd pick, though. Brandon Coleman, I still think, can play. But you misevaluated if he could play guard or not. So now one of your 5 best linemen sits on the bench. And Luke McCaffrey, 100th overall pick. He's okay, But for a third-round receiver, you'd like a little bit more, and we'll see. Maybe he continues to develop. I thought he started to come on as he got opportunities this season. I think he actually started to make the most of it, so it's a credit to him. But that's a very uninspiring group outside of Jaden Daniels. And so if you're looking at how do you build this thing for the long term, you have to hit on your draft picks. You have to. And so this year doesn't look as bad. This season doesn't look as bad. Going into next year, the outlook of next year doesn't look as bad if you just hit on your draft picks. How much better do you feel if Johnny Newton's an impact defensive tackle? If Mikey Samerstill is a legit corner? If Brandon Coleman is a starting offensive lineman and Luke McCaffrey is your number 2 or number 3 receiver going into next year and you feel good about all those picks, you're not going to hit on every pick. I understand that. But if you felt good about all those things, we're not going into next year going, my gosh, the cupboard is bare. Part of the reason the cupboard is bare is the assets that you have had have not been used correctly. It's not Ron anymore. You're going into a third full year without Ron's crappy roster. You turn that over. I don't blame you for bringing back Bobby Wagner last year. I don't blame you for bringing back Zach Ertz. But who are the next guys? One of the things that's so disappointing is I'm watching a guy last night like Kaylavon Chason and seeing him develop throughout his career and make really big plays now for the New England Patriots. I know he's on multiple teams, but who's that guy for you? The guy that you feel like you can develop into something. Do you have one of those guys? I don't think you do. Defensively, how many impact players do you even have? I like Trey Amos, but I've said this plenty of times as well. I liked Mikey Samerstill going into year 2, and he didn't play well this year at all. So I want to see Amos do it again before I jump over the moon about it, before I go out and buy a jersey, any of those things, right? I got to see it again. I believe in Trey Amos, but I'm going to be a little bit skeptical after what I saw with Mikey Samerstill. Quan Martin fell off a cliff this year in terms of his play. I don't trust any of the edge rushers aside from Dorrance Armstrong, and now he's coming off an injury. Defensive tackle, Javon Kinlaw. He's not worth $15 million. He can play, I think. He's okay. 0 sacks. I get you don't necessarily judge a D tackle on sacks, but you couldn't accidentally touch a guy on the way down for a half sack? You were nowhere near the quarterback the entire season when he was going down? That's an issue. Johnny Newton doesn't make impact plays there. Daron Payne, personally, with the price tag and everything, I'd move off of him, but I think you could also make the argument he's still maybe, which is an issue, he's still maybe your best defensive player. And at best, he's inconsistent. Frankie Louvu, what the heck happened to him this year? Can Jordan McGee step into a real role this year? This upcoming season? I hope so. But at this point, I do think it's completely valid if you say, well, what the heck has Adam Peters been doing? You've got to build this thing up. You talked about building through the draft and supplementing through free agency. You can only build through the draft if you draft well. So part of the reason you're in the spot you're in right now, it's not to blame the Marshawn Lattimore trade. It's the fact that you had 6 top 100 picks in your first draft, and you maybe only hit on one of them. That's a massive problem. And that's how you end up in a spot where you go from the NFC Championship game, you catch lightning in a bottle with an older roster, to now that old roster that you brought back once again got injured, and you had no one to fill in. It's because you didn't hit on your draft picks. Or, hear me out too, play some young guys. You didn't do that this year either, which made no sense down the stretch. Just to see.